Everyone knows the story of Atlantis, the advanced civilization that disappeared in the ocean. But not everyone is aware of the similar legends other cultures tell of their own lost cities, ones that were buried under desert sand or overgrown by dense vegetation in the jungle. While many of these stories were considered fiction, an increasing number of archaeological discoveries has revealed these legends were more than mere myths. This leaves us wondering how many more lost cities might just be awaiting discovery. We may never find the underwater grave of Atlantis, the golden streets of El Dorado, or the peaceful mountains of Shangri-La, but we have found the following 10 lost cities. Starting the countdown with number 10, here are the most spectacular lost civilizations that archaeologists have uncovered. Number 10. Helike, Greece, the real-life Atlantis. Homer wrote about the legendary city of Helike, which existed in Achaea, western Greece. It was said to share 2 similarities to Atlantis, an advanced and rich culture, and sadly, the same tragic fate. Due to its coastal location, Helike was an important economic, cultural, and political center, even joining leaders of 12 neighboring cities in a diplomatic government. One night, during the winter of 373 BC, the entire city of Helike was mysteriously obliterated. Some signs of the city's impending doom were recorded, including the appearance of immense columns of flames and the mass migration of small animals from the coast to the mountains prior to the disaster. Likely, a major earthquake followed by a large tsunami from the Gulf of Corinth wiped out the city of Helike from the face of the earth. The rescue party that came the following morning found no survivors. Helike was rediscovered in 1988 by 2 archaeologists who searched the coastal waters for more than a decade and finally realized it was buried under land, right underneath their feet. The catastrophe that destroyed it wasn't exactly an act of Poseidon, though no doubt it would have felt like that to ancient Greeks. The earthquake caused soil liquefaction, which created deep pockets in the earth and, consequently, a lagoon. Eventually, the area refilled with river sediment over time, explaining how it again reached above sea level. Number 9. Dwaraka, India, the home of Krishna. In Hinduism, the ancient city of Dwarka is described as the most sacred of all cities. It was the home of Krishna, who lived 5,000 years ago and is still worshipped today as a divinity. Legend described Dwarka as the wealthiest of all ancient cities, built by an architect for the gods, with over 900,000 palaces, and using crystal, coral, gold, silver, sapphires, pearls, and emeralds. Legend says Krishna demanded that 16,000 palaces be built, one for each of his 16,000 queens. In the end, the city was destroyed in a battle, presumably with nature, its buildings and walls succumbing to the force of the sea. Though its description sounds like a tall tale, in 1983, underwater ruins discovered a major ancient seaport matching the topography of Dwarka's description between the existing land and nearby islands. Researchers found evidence to support a city of 9,000 years ago, while the oldest parts of Dwarka might have first been built 32,000 years ago, making it one of the oldest known cities on Earth. At its peak, it was one of the wealthiest seaports in the world. Then, sometime in the 2nd millennium BC, it collapsed into the sea, just like in the legend. Today, much mystery surrounds Dwarka, as excavation is seldom discussed by those living in the area. Number 8. Great Zimbabwe, the medieval castle of Africa. In the early 16th century, Portuguese explorers shared legends they'd heard about a castle in the jungles of Africa. The natives told them that a stone fortress towered over the trees in the land today known as Zimbabwe. The locals called it Shimbawe, and even they didn't know who had built it. It was in such an unlikely location, one European explorer wrote, "It does not seem possible to be the work of man." For centuries, Europeans thought Shimbawe was just a fabricated story. Then, around 1876, German explorers discovered it, a massive castle of stone with walls more than 11 meters tall, made in 900 AD by an African civilization that had been forgotten in time, a civilization somehow incredibly connected with the outside world. Inside the fortress, the Germans found artifacts and relics from all around the world, Arab coins, Persian pottery, even relics from the Chinese Ming Dynasty. The significance of Great Zimbabwe is more than the castle itself. It's proof that an African civilization that was historically forgotten traded with cultures as far away as China. Number 7. Xanadu, China, the Palace of Kublai Khan. In 1278, the explorer Marco Polo came back from China and what is now Inner Mongolia with some incredible descriptions of Kublai Khan's empire. The most remarkable of all, though, was Xanadu, pronounced Zhangdu, the palace of the great Khan. Xanadu, Marco Polo said, was a marble palace surrounded by a massive 26-kilometer wide park that was filled with fountains, rivers, and wild animals. There, it's said the Khan kept 10,000 pure white horses in a golden palace guarded by dragons. It was, in short, a paradise unlike any on earth. The palace was destroyed by the Ming army in 1369, long before other Europeans had the chance to see it. As centuries passed, Xanadu became a myth, a place that poets wrote about, but little more than the stuff of imagination. Then, in 1872, Kublai Khan's palace was found by a British diplomat, with the marble and tiles still intact, though they have since been stripped. Marco Polo wasn't exaggerating. The great Khan's home was twice as big as the White House, surrounded by a massive park that appeared to have once held a wild menagerie of animals from around the world, as described in the legend. There really were ramps for horses in every part of it, and the dragons were statues on top of the pillars. Some of these were among the few things archaeologists managed to successfully preserve. Number 6. Sigiriya, Sri Lanka, the 8th wonder of the world. In Sri Lanka, during the 5th century AD, King Kassapa built his rock fortress atop a large boulder that protruded 200 meters, which is 650 feet, amidst a dense jungle. It's still considered the most spectacular single construction project in the history of Sri Lanka, and it included a royal citadel, extensive gardens, a stone theater, fountains, and artistic frescoes. To enter, one had to walk up a large staircase that went through a large lion which had been sculpted into the rock. For a while, Sigiriya became an outpost, and later it became a Buddhist monastery. But somehow the once exquisite palace became deserted for a period of almost 500 years. Then, in 1890, European archaeologists confirmed the legend, including the stone lion surrounding the staircase requiring that you walk through his mouth to ascend. Inside, even after centuries, they marveled at the architectural masterpiece they called the Sky Palace. In 2001, the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, also known as UNESCO, declared Sigiriya the 8th wonder of the world and today what remains of it is a popular tourist destination. Number 5. Leptis Magna, the Roman city buried in sand. Leptis Magna was once a beautifully structured coastal Roman city and a trading port in Libya. After it fell to Vandals in 439 AD, it was later buried under sandstorms. Leptis Magna was the place where the Roman Emperor Septimus Severus ruled. He expanded the city to become one of the most important parts of the empire, but when Rome fell, Leptis Magna did too. It was pillaged by Arab invaders, left in ruins, and completely forgotten as it became buried under the desert sands. Leptis Magna remained buried for 1,200 years, until 19th century archaeologists found it almost perfectly preserved. To their delight, they didn't just find traces of pottery and tools. They were able to unearth the entire city. Leptis Magna still has an amphitheater, baths, a basilica, and an area for a circus, so amazingly well preserved by the sand that they look similar to how they would have appeared when the city was inhabited. Some have said that visiting Leptis Magna is like stepping into a time machine and going back thousands of years. Number 4. Vinland, the Viking land of plenty. 1,000 years ago, as Europe was emerging from what historians call the Dark Ages, Danish king and explorer Sven Estridsson told stories about a lush, abundant land far across the Atlantic that he called Vinland, after the grapevines which, he said, grew of their own accord. In 1073, a German cleric named Adam of Bremen transcribed what the Danish king relayed. He added that the king's men, the Danish Vikings, claimed they'd fought with Vinland natives they called the Skrælingr. The Skrælingr, they said, dressed in white clothes and lived in caves and holes. When they attacked, they carried long poles and they charged, screaming out loud cries of war. Well, due to confusion about its actual location, Vinland was disregarded as a myth for centuries. Not until the 1960s was the true story uncovered when archaeologists found remains of an 11th century Viking settlement at L'Anse aux Meadows in Newfoundland, Canada. This remarkable discovery proved not only that Bremen's writings from 1,000 years earlier were accurate, it proved that Europeans had visited North America much earlier than history claimed. The Vikings arrived on the North American continent 500 years before Columbus discovered it. Number 3. Heraklion, the drowned Egyptian city. The city of Heraklion appears in almost every Greek myth. It was the city where Hercules took his first steps into Africa, and the place where Paris of Troy and his stolen bride Helen hid from Menelaus before the Trojan War. And, like most myths, we had no idea where or if it really existed. As it turns out, there was a good reason. It was underwater. About 2,200 years ago, Heraklion was likely hit by a massive earthquake, or tsunami, on the Egyptian coastline, and it appeared undisturbed for centuries in the ocean on the north coast of Egypt. In 2001, an archaeologist searching for French warships underwater stumbled across what appeared to be a sunken city. When divers resurfaced with a strange rock from the ruins, they realized they'd found the remains of an ancient Greek statue. Archaeologists dug through layers of sand to uncover the surprisingly well-preserved city with many of its treasures still intact. The main temple, giant statues of pharaohs, hundreds of smaller statues of gods and goddesses, a sphinx, 64 ancient ships, and no less than 700 anchors, stone blocks with both Greek and ancient Egyptian inscriptions, dozens of sarcophagi, and gold coins and other items made from bronze and stone. Divers even found large slabs with hieroglyphics, warning visitors of the Egyptian tax laws. Uncovering the ancient city Heraklion was one of the most significant underwater discoveries of the century. Number 2. La Ciudad Perdida, Colombia, the Lost City. Around 1300 years ago, an ancient tribe in South America called the Tairona built wooden structures upon stone that ascended into the Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta mountains. Legend says it was built according to the command of their god, who wanted them to live close to the stars. It was inhabited for several hundred years and wiped out when the Spanish conquistadors brought diseases that spread throughout the region. When the last of its inhabitants died, it was left barren for hundreds of years. The city wasn't discovered until the 1970s, when a group of bandits making their way through the jungle stumbled upon it. The ancient overgrown city was still full of gold jewelry and jade artifacts. Pocketing what they could find, they sold it on the black market, where they came to the attention of archaeologists. Soon the government stepped in to protect what was only known as the Lost City, after nearly 500 years of being hidden in the jungle. Number 1. The Ciudad Blanca, the White City, also known as the Lost City of the Monkey God. At the turn of the 15th century, the Spanish conquistador Hernán Cortés unsuccessfully searched for lost villages of extreme wealth in the virgin rainforest of Honduras. Centuries later, while flying over the area, Charles Lindbergh claimed to have seen white stone walls of what appeared to be a city in the jungle. Then, in 1939, an American adventurer and spy named Theodore Mord returned with artifacts from the area and an elaborate story about a unique temple among the hidden ruins. He claimed guides told him a 1,000-year-old legend about a monkey who had stolen 3 women with whom it bred, resulting in half monkey, half human children. Mord described in detail stone effigies of monkeys in a temple, with a large stone dais bearing the image of the monkey god himself. But he never revealed the precise location of his find, claiming he feared it would be looted. Mord then died by apparent suicide before he could return to Honduras. Meanwhile, someone who found his journals revealed that the true intention of his travels was to find gold, adding further confusion to his credibility and controversy as to the true existence of this lost city. Though various surrounding areas were being excavated, the lost city of the monkey god remained a legend until very recently. In 2012, new aerial technology called LiDAR, light detection and ranging, revealed the shape of ruins over a square mile in a dense area of the jungle. Exploring it, expeditionist Douglas Preston found sculptures at the base of an earthen pyramid. He added, "I first saw a carved jaguar head coming out of the ground, gleaming with rain. It rose up snarling as if struggling to escape the earth. It was an image that spoke directly to me across the centuries, forging an immediate emotional connection to those vanished people, confident, accomplished, and formidable. Among the ancient mounds, enveloped in the mist, I could almost feel the presence of the invisible dead." The discovery came at a great price, however. Dangerous drug cartels and deadly snakes aside, many of Preston's team returned home to discover they'd contracted a deadly flesh-eating parasite. Archaeologists have since uncovered extensive plazas, mounds, earthen pyramids, and dozens of finely carved artifacts from this still mysterious culture, about whom we know very little. So in conclusion, if these 10 fantastic discoveries are any indication of what's possible, it might just mean that there are no legends too spectacular to be true. Which of these ancient lost cities do you find most intriguing? Share your thoughts in the comments below.